leaders in Minnesota slamming the Trump administration over reports of planned immigration enforcement targeting Somalians. And
these individuals are associated with a gang known as the Family Mob. They include individuals with long histories of
4:00 a.m. December 2nd, 2024. Minneapolis wasn't awake yet, but the federal government was, and what they were about to uncover would shatter every assumption about who really controls America's heartland. Operation Northern Sweep was 58 seconds from execution, 27 targets, 900 individuals. Over 1,000 federal badges ready to move. This wasn't a drug bust. This wasn't gang enforcement. This was war. The digital map inside the Federal Command Center pulsed red. Each dot represented a location where federal agents believed a sophisticated criminal network had embedded itself, not in the shadows. Not in abandoned warehouses. Inside community centers, nonprofits, soccer leagues, mosques, the target wasn't a cartel, it was something far more dangerous. A hybrid organization that blended charity with violence, community leadership with trafficking, and American opportunity with international crime. At the center stood one man. Abdi Karim Sheikh Karim Halden, 34 years old, businessman, philanthropist, community advocate, and according to federal prosecutors, one of the most dangerous criminals in the Midwest. If you want to see how deep this goes, hit like so this video reaches more people. For 3 years, federal investigators watched. They listened, they followed money through encrypted channels and coded phone calls. They tracked heroin shipments disguised as furniture deliveries. They documented murders disguised as disputes, and they built a case that would rewrite Minnesota history. Outside, the winter air cut like razors. Armored vehicles rolled through darkness toward Cedar Riverside. Helicopters drifted low over the Mississippi River. Thermal cameras scanned windows glowing faintly through frost. FBI hostage rescue teams adjusted their rifle optics. ICE sniper elements scanned rooftops. DEA strike units checked breaching charges under dim red lights. No one spoke. The time for talking had ended. At 4:36 a.m., the final authorization flashed across every screen, 2 words that would change Minneapolis forever. Execute Northern Sweep. Convoys shifted into attack formation. Helicopters banked toward target zones. Agents stepped into the frozen darkness. Down on Riverside Avenue, lights flickered inside a 3-story apartment. Behind one window, Sheikh Karim sat awake. He wasn't a man who slept deeply anymore, not after federal surveillance had tightened, not after shipments disappeared near Duluth. Not after whispers reached him that agents were interviewing people close to his network. He knew pressure was building, he just didn't know it was already outside his door. FBI teams approached from both ends of the street. ICE units sealed back alleys, DEA agents surrounded the parking lot. Rifles up, shields forward, motion sensors activated. At exactly 4:58 a.m., every radio crackled in unison. Breach, breach, breach. Comment exposed below if you're ready for the truth. Minneapolis erupted, doors shattered under explosive charges. Flashbangs detonated across 12 locations simultaneously. The shock waves rolled through Cedar Riverside like thunder trapped in concrete. Agents flooded stairwells. Commands echoed over ringing explosions. Snipers targeted armed lookouts posted behind curtains. In 15 seconds, federal teams hit every major node of Karim's network. Inside Karim's apartment, boots thundered upstairs. A battering ram struck the reinforced door once. Twice, 3 times, the lock broke. Agents surged forward into smoke and darkness. They found barricaded hallways, furniture blocking doors, steel rods ripped from bed frames. It didn't matter. Nothing could stop the breach teams that morning. On the 3rd floor, armed guards fired down a corridor. 3 controlled bursts meant to slow the advance. Rounds hammered into ballistic shields with metallic thuds. Seconds later, agents returned precision fire. The defender retreated into a cramped bedroom. Then thermal imaging lit up a hidden compartment behind the northeast wall, a false panel, an escape route built into the structure itself. The ram hit it 3 times. The panel cracked open. Behind it was a narrow stairwell leading to the basement garage. And running through it, feet-pounding concrete, was Abdi Karim Sheikh Karim Halden. He reached the garage, shoved the emergency door open, bolted toward a black Honda CR-V parked near the exit ramp. Keys in hand, freedom 3 seconds away, he never made it. A U.S. Marshal's interceptor slid across the garage floor, tires screeching, blocking the vehicle's path. Before Karim could turn back, 3 agents converged. Weapons raised, commands echoing off concrete beams. Down, down, do it now, type yes if you believe justice is worth fighting for. Karim froze, hands shaking. Chest heaving. For the first time in a decade, the man who controlled an underground empire had nowhere left to go. He was taken to the ground, cuffed, searched, photographed, moved under heavy guard toward extraction convoys. Across the district, final resistance collapsed. Sharp bursts of rifle fire echoed twice, then silence as snipers neutralized the last armed holdouts. By 6:12 a.m., the grid was falling. By 6:40, entire buildings were locked down. By 7:10, Minneapolis was under federal control. 900 targets identified, hundreds detained, major lieutenants in custody, weapons seized. Drug processing labs dismantled, cash laundering hubs emptied. On civilian streets, residents stepped onto balconies. They watched silently as convoy trucks rolled past, steel shadows fading into pale winter morning. Operation Northern Sweep had landed. The core of the network was broken. But what federal agents found inside those buildings would shock even seasoned investigators. When the sun rose over Minneapolis, the city looked unchanged. Snow on rooftops, steam drifting from vents, the same winter silence, but nothing was the same. Federal convoys still moved through intersections. Patrol drones hovered over alleyways. Tactical teams guarded perimeters of breached buildings. Operation Northern Sweep was no longer an assault. It was now an autopsy, a methodical dissection of a criminal machine that operated in plain sight for years. Inside a repurposed industrial hangar, agents began assembling evidence. The amount filled the entire structure. Tables covered in counterfeit passports, racks of phones wired to portable routers, cartons of fentanyl powder vacuum-sealed for transport, assault rifles hidden inside food delivery crates, cash bundles wrapped with Somali numerals. It didn't look like a gang bust, it looked like the fall of an intelligence cell. Share this so more people understand what's happening in America. ATF specialists matched serialless rifles to seizures in Europe and the Horn of Africa. DEA chemists confirmed fentanyl came from a northeastern pipeline through New Jersey and Baltimore. ICE analysts mapped Hawala transfers from Minneapolis to Kenya, Somalia, UAE, Sweden, and the UK. Every string pointed back to one man, Abdi Karim Sheikh Karim Halden. His arrest was only the beginning. Over the following days, detainees cooperated in exchange for reduced charges. Their statements rebuilt the network layer by layer. At the top was Karim, the architect, overseeing finances, logistics, enforcement. Below him, 6 lieutenants responsible for narcotics distribution, weapons procurement, Hawala laundering, documentation forgery, safe house management, and recruitment. Beneath them, dozens of mid-level coordinators embedded inside restaurants, auto shops, nonprofits, and community centers. The lowest tier consisted of temporary enforcers, transient workers, out-of-status migrants, young men without ties trained to intimidate without leaving traces. The structure mirrored military doctrine, compartmentalized, disciplined, redundant, resilient. One prosecutor said it plainly during a closed-door briefing. This wasn't a gang, this was an operational cell. Federal charges were unsealed within 72 hours. Karim faced conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, interstate trafficking, money laundering, passport fraud, weapons charges, obstruction, racketeering. His sentencing would guarantee life in federal prison. His 6 lieutenants faced 20 to 40-year federal sentences. Dozens of mid-tier members faced 5 to 15 years, but not everyone went to prison. ICE processed more than 300 individuals for immediate removal. Those whose primary roles were financial transfers, logistical support, or forged document operations. Deportation flights were arranged with East African governments. The first removals began before the week ended. For Minneapolis, it was a shock. For the network, total collapse. For the federal government, an unprecedented statement of force. Comment your reaction below if this shocks you, but how did it start? How did federal investigators even know this network existed? 3 years earlier, nothing pointed to a criminal empire. Not at first. Minneapolis was a city built on quiet rhythms. Campus crowds, light rail trains, small businesses along Cedar and Riverside, the smell of coffee drifting through winter streets. The Somali community was one of the most vibrant in America. A network of families, entrepreneurs, imams, students. But beneath the normal flow, investigators began noticing fractures. Small ones, barely visible unless you looked with the right eyes. The first sign came from HSI financial analysts monitoring remittance flows. Hawala transfers spiked in patterns that didn't match seasonal wages or family support. Instead of $200 or $350 transfers, there were bursts of $14,000, $26,000, $42,500. Amounts broken into dozens of microtransactions through different kiosks and storefronts. It looked less like charity, more like structured laundering. Then FBI counterterrorism analysts intercepted encrypted VoIP calls routed through a Minneapolis apartment used as a community translation office. The calls weren't political. They were logistical, code phrases, timestamps, mentions of cold trucks, sealed books, night cargo, terms the Bureau had seen before in East African smuggling corridors. Still, there wasn't enough to act. The The next fragment came from DEA after a routine traffic stop in rural Wisconsin uncovered fentanyl tablets with a chemical signature identical to a seizure months earlier in Newark, New Jersey. There was no logical connection until analysts traced both routes through Minnesota. Someone in Minneapolis wasn't just distributing drugs, they were feeding an interstate pipeline. If you want to see what happened next, hit like now. At the same time, Minneapolis police gang intelligence logged violent incidents around Cedar Riverside, fights that made no sense, not turf battles, not robberies. Not random aggression, they were short, targeted, precise. A man beaten for refusing a delivery job, a store owner intimidated after turning down a new supplier, a translator assaulted after asking the wrong question. Every incident pointed to one circle of influence. Every circle led to the same name whispered in low voices. Karim Sheikh Karim Abd Karim Halden. He appeared nowhere in police reports. He wasn't registered to suspicious businesses. He maintained a perfect public image. Community advocate, donor, mediator, but his presence was like gravity, everything bent toward him. By late 2022, federal agencies agreed to merge their intelligence. A multi-agency task force was formed, FBI Counterterrorism Division, ICE Homeland Security Investigations, DEA Special Operations Division, U.S. Marshals Service, Minneapolis Police Intelligence Unit. The first combined briefing lasted 7 hours. When it ended, everyone understood one thing. None of them could dismantle this network alone. The investigation grew silently. Below headlines, beneath community radar, teams rotated through surveillance shifts inside Cedar Riverside high-rises. Undercover agents embedded in auto shops suspected of storing contraband inside hollowed-out engine blocks. HSI used nighttime drone flights to map foot traffic between buildings. FBI linguists decrypted more than 100 hours of coded phone calls. The deeper they went, the clearer the structure became. The network wasn't improvised, it was architected, military in nature, hierarchical, disciplined, type justice if you believe accountability matters. Karim sat at the top, unreachable, speaking to lieutenants only through couriers trained to avoid surveillance. Below them, financial coordinators kept Hawala transfers below reporting thresholds. Beneath them, a logistics wing embedded inside trucking subcontractors capable of moving product from Minnesota to Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. And at the bottom, enforcers recruited from the margins. Men with no paper trail, disposable but loyal, but investigators still lacked something critical, a point of entry, a place where they could strike without unraveling years of undercover work. That opportunity came from a single man. In early 2024, an employee at a Lake Street money transfer store noticed inconsistencies. 2 men using different names but repeating identical transaction patterns. He didn't trust what he saw. One night after closing, he left an anonymous tip on an HSI hotline. That call triggered the shift. The 2 men were tied to an automotive repair shop south of the university campus. From that shop, investigators observed pickup trucks leaving at odd hours and returning with fresh dents and replaced panels. Cargo manifests didn't match weight readings. Surveillance teams watched the shop's owner regularly meet a driver connected to a Minneapolis-Columbus freight route. The shop became the center of the spiderweb, and the more they pulled threads, the more the structure exposed itself. Storage units, basement processing rooms, forged document forgers. A safe house network for overnight couriers. A hidden relay of encrypted phones bouncing signals across the Midwest. Even then, federal leaders refused to strike prematurely. They needed the whole network, not half, not the foot soldiers, the core. Share this video before it gets buried. The moment came in October. DEA intercepted a package at the St. Paul rail yard. Heroin bricks wrapped in plastic stamped with a symbol, a thin black crescent with a vertical line through its center. That was Sheikh Karim's mark. 3 years of fragments fused into a clear picture. The evidence was overwhelming. The map was complete. By November, federal prosecutors met behind closed doors and made the call. A citywide raid would be authorized, every safe house, every warehouse, every stash location, all at once before dawn on December 2nd, under a direct presidential order. The task force spent 2 weeks preparing, targets mapped, arrest teams assigned, deportation warrants finalized, sniper overwatch approved, air assets scheduled for 400 hours. Operation Northern Sweep was locked into the calendar. Nothing could stop it now. Minneapolis had no idea what was coming. When the raids concluded and evidence rooms filled, federal prosecutors began piecing together the full scope of Karim's empire. The numbers were staggering. $81, $3 million in cash seized from 19 different locations, 243 kilograms of fentanyl powder, 127 kilograms of heroin, 18 assault rifles with filed serial numbers, 47 handguns, explosives, ammunition stockpiles. But the financial trail was even more shocking. Hawala transfers totaling $340 million over 3 years, routed through Minneapolis to Kenya, Somalia, UAE, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. This wasn't street-level crime. This was international finance disguised as cultural exchange. Comment exposed if you're still watching. Federal agents found ledgers coded in scripts designed to mimic religious notation. VPN routers running off portable generators. Phones tethered to encrypted messaging apps with military-grade security. In one basement apartment, agents discovered a drug processing lab capable of cutting and packaging 50 kilograms of fentanyl per week. In another location, a forgery operation producing passports, driver's licenses, social security cards, and employment documents for individuals across the Midwest. The network didn't just traffic drugs. It trafficked identity itself. Prosecutors described the operation as a hybrid threat, part cartel logistics, part immigration fraud, part money laundering syndicate, and all of it hidden inside community infrastructure that law enforcement had been trained to respect and protect. Federal officials emphasized this wasn't about targeting a community. It was about dismantling a criminal organization that exploited a community, but the backlash was immediate. Community leaders accused federal agents of racial profiling. Civil rights organizations filed complaints. Protests erupted outside the ICE field office. Some called it justice. Others called it persecution. The truth, as always, was more complicated. Federal investigators spent 3 years building this case. They used surveillance, financial analysis, undercover operations, and informant testimony. They didn't target people based on ethnicity. They targeted criminal behavior, trafficking, laundering, violence, but the optics were undeniable. A massive federal raid targeting Somali-owned businesses, community centers, and mosques. In a city still healing from years of tension between law enforcement and immigrant communities, Operation Northern Sweep became a flashpoint. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. For residents of Cedar Riverside, the days after felt surreal. Many had heard rumors for years, whispers about hidden money, shady businesses, unexplained violence, but no one expected the truth to be this large, this organized, this deeply woven into the city's fabric. Parents walked children to school through streets that felt lighter, quieter. Community leaders held emergency meetings to stabilize support programs and ensure families weren't caught in the shockwave. And in the background, Minneapolis breathed for the first time in years. Cautiously, but freely, federal oversight remained. HSI embedded intelligence units locally. FBI kept task force personnel in the city. DEA monitored regional drug signatures for signs of resurgence. The goal wasn't just to dismantle the network. It was to prevent the next one. In City Hall, a joint press conference brought together FBI, ICE, DEA, U.S. Marshals, Minnesota officials, and Minneapolis police. They stood shoulder to shoulder as cameras flashed. They didn't celebrate, they warned. Federal commanders emphasized that Minneapolis had been closer than anyone realized to becoming a permanent distribution node for international trafficking networks. Its rail corridors, immigrant business hubs, storage warehouses, all perfect infrastructure. They spoke bluntly about the possibility of a power vacuum. Whenever criminal architecture falls, smaller predators emerge. Whenever money stops flowing, someone else tries to restart it. But this time they said federal oversight would remain permanent. If this shocks you, comment your thoughts below. The final internal report issued to Washington contained a single line that echoed every briefing before it. This wasn't luck. This was discipline. Operation Northern Sweep proved what federal agencies had long suspected. Even inside America's most progressive cities, organized criminal networks can grow silently, rooted in commerce, culture, community structures too complex for local authorities to fight alone. But it also proved something else. When the United States commits its full weight, there's no network it cannot break. From the first breach at 4:58 a.m. to the last deportation order signed before midnight, Operation Northern Sweep rewrote Minnesota's future. The city endured the battle. Now it must survive the aftermath. But the deeper question remains. How many other networks are operating in plain sight across America? How many other leaders wear the mask of philanthropy while running empires of violence? And how long until the next operation begins? This video isn't over. It's only the beginning. If you believe justice is worth fighting for, hit like now. Comment justice below to support this channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the next investigation. Share this video so more people understand what's happening in communities across America. Because the truth isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. And the fight continues.